Hello everyone, welcome back to your Eleanor, and this video we are going to explain Love Alert BL episode number 6. After the conversation with Jimmy, Tae was seen sitting absent-mindedly. He didn't even notice when Fa arrived. Fa asked what was wrong. Tae said he was thinking about his brother and got carried away. Fa asked what had happened this time. According to Tae, yesterday To went to see Jimmy. Tae didn't know what happened. But when To came home, he looked extremely exhausted. Tae felt sorry for To. And he hated seeing his brother in that condition. Just thinking about it already made Tae very angry. And he felt like he should go and punch Jimmy. Fa reminded Tae again that violence would not solve anything. The problem was also that To refused to let go. That was why Fa once said that To had to reach his limit and choose himself instead. Because that was the only way. Tae never expected that the one he cherished could be that cruel. Fa asked whether that meant Tae wanted to break up with him. Tae immediately hugged Fa and said that Fa was indeed scary, but he still loved him. When Tae tried to kiss Fa stopped him because they were on campus. At his cafe, To began thinking about Jimmy's request that he had to promise. He saw a notification on his phone. It was a call from Jimmy. To became very enthusiastic. It turned out that Jimmy invited To to eat. Because his exam was already over. He said he would treat To. To said that he should be the one treating Jimmy instead. Jimmy refused. He said it would be better if To treated him. Only if his grades were good enough. One of Jimmy's friends, Tittle, who happened to come to the restaurant, started greeting Jimmy. Tittle was introduced to To. When he heard that To was the older brother of his friend, To could only look at Jimmy. Tittle even thought that To was Jimmy's boyfriend. Not wanting too many questions, Jimmy told his friend to leave. Feeling sad, To excused himself to go to the restroom. To washed his face and reassured himself to stay strong, not to act childish and make Jimmy angry. When To returned, Jimmy saw that his face was wet and asked what happened. To said that something got into his eye, so he had to clean it. To should have told Jimmy, because Jimmy had eye drops. Using tap water would only make his eyes irritated. Because he was hungry, Jimmy invited To order food. Seeing that To was very quiet, Jimmy explained that Tittle knew Tae, and he didn't want unnecessary drama. That was why Jimmy introduced To that way earlier. Jimmy asked whether To was angry. To answered no, because he had promised not to act childish. Jimmy praised To for being so cute. Suddenly Jimmy's phone rang. It was Run calling him. Knowing that Run was having trouble, Jimmy had to excuse himself and leave. To was left behind. Run was taken to Jimmy's house. Jimmy said that Run could rest there for a while he went out to buy food. Run thanked Jimmy for allowing him to stay at his house, even though their relationship had already ended. For Jimmy, it wasn't something worth discussing, because now his house was the safest place for Run. Run didn't need to face a man like that again. To called Jimmy. He asked whether Jimmy was already home. He also asked what had happened and why Jimmy suddenly had to leave. Jimmy answered that his friend had a small problem, and now everything was resolved. To asked which friend it was and whether he knew them. Hearing To's question, Jimmy felt that To was suspecting him. To immediately said that he wasn't suspecting Jimmy. He was just worried. Jimmy firmly said that if he really needed To's help, He would have contacted Toe from the beginning. It seemed like Toe didn't trust him. Jimmy hated being suspected. And ended the call. Toe was hurt again. Seeing Run eating while enduring pain, Jimmy helped him. Run asked whether the one who had just called was Jimmy's new lover. Jimmy thought yes. Because right now there was only Toe. According to Run, Toe was very jealous. Jimmy said that Toe's behavior was probably because he loved Jimmy very much. Run asked again whether Toe would really be able to endure Jimmy. Because when they were together, even when Run was only a little jealous, Jimmy had already scolded him. For Jimmy, if Run raised his voice, he would respond with the same tone. And Run had to be able to endure it. Run should have been more patient. Because at least Jimmy had never once hit him. Jimmy told Run to rest. And said he would take care of the rest. The next day, Toe enthusiastically went to Jimmy's house while bringing food for him. But when he entered, Toe saw that there was someone inside Jimmy's house. That person was even wearing Jimmy's jacket. Run asked whether Toe was looking for Jimmy. Toe answered yes. At that moment, Jimmy, who had just woken up, told Run to pour him some water as well. Only then did Jimmy realize that Toe was there. He asked what Toe was doing there. Toe hid the food he had brought. The three of them sat together. Jimmy then explained that he wouldn't let Run stay there if it weren't because Run was having problems. Toe understood. He also apologized for coming without informing Jimmy. Toe said he was just worried about Jimmy. Jimmy also apologized for speaking harshly the night before. Run noticed that Toe had brought food and was about to offer it to Jimmy. Quickly, Run asked whether Jimmy was hungry. Because if he was, Run could cook Jimmy's favorite food. Coincidentally, he had seen the ingredients in the refrigerator. Jimmy said yes. And that he really missed Run's cooking. Toe was hurt again. Seeing Toe looking sad, Jimmy asked what was wrong. Toe said that he hadn't realized that Jimmy liked the food made by his friend. Knowing that Toe misunderstood again, Jimmy became annoyed once more and told Toe not to act like that. Toe chose to leave. After the food was ready, Jimmy ate it eagerly. Run made the dish as a thank you and told Jimmy that he could tell him anytime if he wanted it again. Run then asked about Jimmy's lover, whether Jimmy wasn't going to apologize. Toe looked very upset and left just like that. Jimmy said that he never went back to anyone first and that Toe himself was being irrational. Toe returned home crying. He poured out his sadness in front of the gate. Tay came home and saw Toe in that condition and invited him inside. Tay was also with Fa. Tay asked whether Toe didn't love himself at all. Why he kept doing things like that. Toe apologized for secretly dating Jimmy. Tay said that he already knew. He didn't comment much because he wanted his brother to realize it on his own. To realize that Jimmy wasn't good enough for Toe. Fa agreed with Tay. There were still many choices. It would be better for Toe to leave Jimmy. But it was up to Toe. Maybe someday Toe would realize it himself. Fa added that Toe could give his love to someone who truly deserved it. Don't waste it on someone like Jimmy. Toe could see Jimmy's treatment for himself. Jimmy would call Toe when he needed him and disappear after he felt satisfied. As if Jimmy treated Toe like a trophy to show off. Fa knew that Toe understood what was happening. Toe was just having a hard time letting go. That night, To apologized to Jimmy again. Jimmy, who received To's message, only smiled. Run came in and said he needed an extra pillow because sleeping on the sofa was uncomfortable. He needed something to support his legs. Jimmy said that Run should have told him, because in that case, he would sleep on the sofa instead. When Jimmy was about to leave, Run started teasing him. He asked whether the two of them could get back together. Run thought that Jimmy was starting to waver, but Jimmy instead asked whether Run thought that he would kiss him. Jimmy chose to take his phone and told Run to leave, because from what Jimmy saw, Run was already better. Run didn't say anything and left immediately. Meanwhile, on the other side, To was restless because Jimmy hadn't replied to his messages. Finally, Jimmy replied. If To wanted him to forgive him, then To had to come to his house right away. Jimmy wanted to hug and kiss To right now. To smiled and replied that Jimmy should wait for him. Jimmy called To. Jimmy said that he liked it when To loved him so much and always spoiled him. Jimmy asked whether To could love him like this forever. To answered that he would love and protect Jimmy forever, as long as Jimmy didn't treat him cruelly. Jimmy agreed. Even after hearing Jimmy agree, To was seen crying while trying to stay strong. The days of Jimmy and To passed filled with love. The two of them grew even closer, until one day, To saw his brother busy decorating a cake. To felt like he was just being made a joke of. To tried to comfort him, but To instead went back to Jimmy again. That annoyed To so much that it made him cough. But To asked who his brother was talking to, because To was acting very strangely. To was startled. Then he asked what was so great about Jimmy, why To was so crazy about him. To only said that he would finish decorating the cake and go celebrate Jimmy's birthday. So he asked To to watch the house. When To agreed, his hands were mischievous. And then To lay his head on Fa's lap. He felt frustrated with his brother. Fa said again that To just needed to suffer until he reached his breaking point. But To hated seeing To get hurt. As for Jimmy, To didn't know how long he would continue being annoying. To knew that Jimmy liked To. Jimmy just hadn't realized it yet. Fa asked what made To so sure that Jimmy loved To. To explained that if he didn't, Jimmy would have ended all his relationships long ago. Fa also asked if one day To decided to leave, what To would do. To said that he would stay by To's side to comfort him. And as for Fa, he would kick Jimmy when he fell. To smiled as he said that. At campus, Jimmy received a call from To. To asked whether Jimmy's exam was already finished. Jimmy answered yes. He had just come out of the exam room. To then asked whether Jimmy was going to celebrate with his friends. Jimmy said no. He would go straight home and sleep. The exam had made him very tired. Jimmy asked if something was wrong. To answered no. He just wanted to ask. And he said that he simply missed Jimmy. To began preparing himself to leave. Meanwhile, To and Fa were looking at the cake that To had made. To felt a little annoyed seeing it. He asked Fa whether they could sabotage the surprise To had prepared for Jimmy. Fa said that To would definitely attack the two of them. To, who had been listening all along, said that he would definitely cut ties with To. To To, his brother was very cruel. They shared the same blood and were siblings. To warned them not to mess with the cake he had made. To took the cake with him. Tay muttered that Toe was the one giving the surprise. But he would also be the one getting surprised. Fa signaled Tay to stay quiet and told Toe to leave quickly. Tay asked Fa why he stopped him. In the end, Toe would find out anyway. Fa explained that Toe had to find out on his own. Not from the two of them. Toe arrived at Jimmy's house, but Jimmy was not there. While waiting, Toe played with Sensei. He even asked where Jimmy was. It turned out that Jimmy was at a bar. Jimmy, who was enjoying the party, reminded his two friends that they were not allowed to go home until they were completely drunk. Sadly, Toe sat waiting for Jimmy while staring at the cake he had brought. Toe tried calling Tay. He asked whether Tay knew where Jimmy was. While they were busy toasting drinks, Toe arrived there. Coincidentally, Run also came carrying a cake. Run and Jimmy's friends started singing the birthday song. Run told Jimmy to make a wish. Tittle asked what Jimmy wished for. Did he want to be together again with the man who brought him the cake? Jimmy answered that it was a secret. If he told them, it wouldn't come true. His friends began teasing Jimmy. They asked about the person Jimmy was currently dating. They assumed that Jimmy wasn't serious about his current partner. Because if he truly were serious, he would have already introduced him to them. Toe's heart shattered. He cried. Especially after seeing Jimmy's intimacy with Run. Jimmy turned his head and finally noticed that Toe was there. Toe chose to leave, while Jimmy chased after him. Run smiled. Jimmy told Toe to stop. Seeing Toe crying uncontrollably, Jimmy asked whether Tay was the one who told him. Toe answered yes. But Tay didn't tell him on his own initiative. Toe had called Tay after he couldn't find Jimmy at home. Jimmy apologized, saying that everything was his fault for lying. Toe said that Jimmy didn't understand anything. Toe asked what he actually meant to Jimmy. But Jimmy instead changed the subject. Seeing Toe yelling at him, Jimmy said that Toe could talk to him normally. In the end, Toe realized that no matter what he did, no matter what he said, according to Jimmy, everything was always wrong. Was he really Jimmy's partner? Or just someone Jimmy kept for bedroom matters? Toe added that he was in the position of simply being himself. Jimmy asked what Toe actually wanted. To create drama? To look for trouble? What was Toe's real purpose? Jimmy said he didn't like Toe when he acted like this. So did Toe want Jimmy to leave? Did Toe think Jimmy's love was that great? On the contrary. Wasn't it Toe who always chased after him? And wasn't Toe the one who had fallen for him? Jimmy suggested that they break up, and they could see who would suffer first. Hearing how easily Jimmy said the word break up. Did Jimmy never love him at all? Jimmy answered yes. And that their relationship was over. Toe warned that after they broke up, Jimmy should never show his face in front of him again. Not even as a friend. With confidence, Jimmy reminded Toe to do exactly what he just said. And to make sure he could really do it. Toe didn't turn back and chose to leave. Lost and crying continuously. Toe reassured himself to stay strong. After all, it was only his relationship that had ended. He would be fine. Meanwhile, Jimmy went back to grab another drink and dance, trying to forget what had upset him. Run helped take Jimmy home. But when Run was about to enter, Jimmy chose to lock the door. Seeing the cake that Toe had made, Jimmy was convinced that Toe would come back to him, and that he would wait for Toe. Jimmy cried and said that he was sorry. That's all for this part. See you in the next episode 7. Thank you for watching and then have a nice day.